Hey everybody, Dave and Seana. We got an hour of big game coverage coming for you. The quarterback matchup, Jalen Hurts versus Patrick Mahomes.
And we are talking to Ndamukong Suh of the Eagles. A huge game on Sunday. He'll obviously be involved with that. We'll talk about the game, also his investments. Fun fact, he's buddy-buddy with Warren Buffett.
And one analyst says Apple could win the Super Bowl. We'll tell you why. Also, how much it costs to go to the game and stay home, even to buy those chicken wings.
Yeah, those prices are racking up there. And also the number of people expected to bet on the Super Bowl, 50 million Americans. One of the big prop bets, what's going to be the color of that Gatorade shower? What do you think?
I'm going red.
I'm going orange. I was going to go yellow. Red's a bold bet. I like it. We will see who the winner is.
Hey everybody, welcome into our Super Bowl 57 coverage. I'm Dave Briggs alongside Shauna Smith. Cannot wait for this game. We got a lot coming your way over the next hour. I'm really excited for the game itself, but I wanted you to go first on what you're eyeing in the game or outside the game.
Well, in the game, I'm going to say an overall thing. It's going to be the Eagles, my hometown team. I am very, very excited for them going for their second title in the last 6 years. Specific, Jalen Hurts. Okay. It's all about him. He's got to keep the momentum. I'm excited about that. Aside from the game, the halftime show. Apple is now is the official sponsor of the show this year, taking over from Pepsi. Rihanna's back on the live music stage. I'm excited.
I'm just out of the loop on Rihanna. I'm sorry. I don't want to offend anybody. I just don't get it. But I know she's awesome. I'm excited because, look, I think the Eagles have a far superior roster. I do acknowledge that. But Andy Reid always has something interesting up his sleeve, something you have never seen before. And Patrick Mahomes has that Harry Potter-like wand. He has magic. I think they actually should be a 7 or an 8 point underdog. I think the Eagles are a much better team. But the Chiefs can really surprise you. But I'll be honest, what I'm really looking forward to is my only Super Bowl tradition, my wife's buffalo chicken dip. Ooh. It's awesome. Like, that's all that matters for me on Super Bowl Sunday.
You're going to have to bring over leftovers on Monday, then.
There won't be any, dude.
Well, maybe you should make a little
I'll be
bit
like
more,
scraping the bowl with my fingers when the chips run out.
I got to get the recipe after this
insane.
show. All right, well, this might be the biggest Super Bowl yet for the gambling industry. Lots to look forward to this weekend. The American Gaming Association releasing its predictions for Super Bowl 57, estimating that about 50 million Americans will bet roughly $16 billion on this year's game. That's more than double last year's total. But our own Josh Schafer has been looking further into this number, what it really means for the sportsbook operators. What do you got for us, Josh?
That's right, Shauna. So that $16 billion number is obviously a massive number, but not all of that is going to go right to the sports books. So for starters, that number includes both bets placed legally and illegally. It's also an estimate. And if we take a look at last year's estimate, $7.61 billion translated to just $950 million of legal handle. That's according to the AGA's assessment of state data. So less than 15% of last year's estimation ended up as legal handle. Now, the total amount bet at legal books, and then if you have to think about how these sports books make money, right? So you take that handle, that legal handle, that $950 million, and then you subtract what's known as the gross winning margin, or you multiply it by that gross winning margin, which is only 10% on average. Then when you multiply those, you end up only getting $95 million as the total legal handle, the gross gaming revenue, which is what goes back to the sports books. That's the number that ends up getting taxed. And that can be taxed, guys, at about an average of a 20% rate. So they're $95 million, then taxed at 20%. It's just not quite as big as that $16 billion number we like to talk about all the time, but it is still a huge week, Dave. The stocks have been roaring headed into the Super Bowl, the three or four of the gambling stocks here over the last month. So it certainly is an exciting time.
You just took like an extra large pizza and boiled it down to one slice. But
that slice could be delicious. That slice could be absolutely delicious.
And it's still a pretty solid slice. Like,
right.
It's a New York-sized slice.
That's right.
But the game is not in New York. It's in Arizona, and that's the first time we've ever had a legal sports gambling state host a Super Bowl. What does that mean? What are the implications?
Well, it means that people can bet while they're sitting in the stadium, right? And that's the biggest thing that we're going to be watching. And really what I want to point out here, too, is the tax rate. So Arizona taxes mobile betting at a 10% rate. And why I'm watching that number is because Arizona's probably going to have a higher handle this Sunday than they normally would. They're going to get a 10% rate on that. They're going to get a lot of state revenue, guys. And I'm curious how that leads moving forward as we continue to see gambling grow. Are more states going to want the Super Bowl to bring in a lot of gamblers, get people excited for the game, and get more state revenue. Seems like a decent deal to me.
Where's the game next year? Vegas, baby. I mean,
Not a bad place for gambling.
That seems like it'll work out well. Great stuff. 50 million Americans expected to throw down $16 billion in bets on Super Bowl 57. Let's dig into those numbers with DraftKings CEO Jason Robbins. Jason, good to see you, man. 33 states now legal. How big is this weekend for you guys compared to anything you've seen in the past? What are your expectations?
Well, I mean, given the growth of the industry, this is almost certainly going to be our biggest Super Bowl ever. And, you know, hard to know. It's always, we always have predictions around the office going in because it's such a fun time. But one thing we know is it's going to be a big day. We know it's going to be our biggest customer acquisition day. And we're all excited to see the results. By the way, I heard in the other set, you're betting on red for the Gatorade. Did I hear that right?
Do I have the wrong color, bro?
Listen, I don't know, but somebody told me, and you should verify this because I did not verify it myself, that there has never been red Gatorade poured on the winning coach in the Super Bowl. So maybe this is the year, but just a little hot take for you to check out. And I could be totally wrong on that. That was something somebody told me, but you should check that out.
Betting scoop. I appreciate that, buddy. That is solid. I had my eye on like an Eagles green, so I'm going to have to look at the odds here on DraftKings.
I was going to say, geez, I think I picked orange. Hopefully my odds are a little bit better than what Dave is facing right now. But Jason, you talk about the popularity of sports betting. Certainly we have seen massive growth over the last several years with the Super Bowl in Arizona, like we're talking about, the first state with statewide legalized sports gambling here. In terms of the number of users that you are expected to add, can you put a number on that?
We can. I mean, we actually have earnings next week, so I got to be careful about saying anything like that. But also, it's just tough to predict. I mean, so much comes in towards the end in the last day and even in the last hours. And so hard to say, but I know that we think it'll be our biggest day ever, and that's been the case for the last 4 Super Bowls since legalized sports betting as well.
Jason, I'm curious what you're seeing out of the live betting space. Obviously, I think it being in Arizona probably helps, right, with people being excited while they're at the game to probably bet during the game while they're sitting in the stands. I know often we talk about that Europe number, right, maybe getting to 75% of all bets or all handle being in that live betting space. Do you think we eventually get there, or is that where things are headed? How have you sort of seen those trends?
You know, live betting continues to increase. I think whether we get there or higher or a little low, I don't know, but I think it's going to continue to grow. I think more and more people are starting to see that you can make bets during the game. And that doesn't just mean things like what's the next play or something like that. Some people decide, hey, maybe at halftime they want to double down on the bet they made before the game, or maybe they want to, you know, switch sides or something like that. So lots of options throughout the game. We also, you mentioned Arizona. This is the first year since legalized sports betting outside of Nevada that you will have a Super Bowl in a state with legal sports betting. So really excited to see how that plays out. I agree with you. I think it's going to have a tremendous halo effect on the state because not only the people at the game, but all the people that are in Arizona that know that Super Bowl is here and are paying attention. And we're doing everything we can to let all the people coming in from out of town know, hey, while you're here, you can make a bet. And I think you're going to see a lot of fans take us up on that.
Yeah, that is interesting. And next year it'll be the second in a row because it's in Vegas.
Yeah.
But in terms of the big picture, certainly all the momentum is on the side of sports gambling. But those 3 big states are out there, California, Texas, and Florida. What went wrong in California, and when do you see any of those 3 states turning legal?
Well, I mean, California, it's pretty simple. We had over $200 million in opposition spend against us. I think, 8 times, maybe it's close to that. The next biggest opposition spend of any campaign. So, we were literally attacked with a barrage of ads, many of them pushing false narratives, but not much you can do in a short cycle, and people hear what they hear. And unfortunately, I think some incorrect facts got out there. So, I think first we're going to try to work with the tribes. Obviously, that's a much easier path than trying to fight them. And nobody wants that. We actually had in our ballot initiative revenue going to the tribes. We had tethering to the tribes. Everything had to flow through the tribes. And, we're going to hopefully get another year, 2 years from now. 1 year from now, we're going to be able to potentially take another shot. And I think we have to learn from last time and educate a little better and be smarter about it. So we'll see on that one. Texas is in play this year. I think there's a live bill that has a decent shot of advancing. We'll have to see. Obviously, a lot to play out in the legislative session. So I think those are the two biggest states. Florida, you mentioned, also, a tribal state, so it has some of the same dynamics. But in that case, it's really one tribe, the Seminoles. So, trying to figure out a way to collaborate with them, I think. And hopefully that's where the industry's going. There's just more collaboration, and everybody realizes that a rising tide will lift all ships. And I think that's something that we're seeing slowly but surely to try and move towards, but still a lot of work to do there, and especially in those big states. They're big prizes. So there are obviously going to be a lot of interest and a lot of stakeholders.
All right, Jason Robbins, CEO of DraftKings, always great to have you. Thanks so much. Have fun this weekend.
Thank you so much.
All right, well, Arizona, like we've been talking about, is hosting this year's Super Bowl. Hundreds of thousands of fans are already there, getting ready for the big game. Yahoo Finance contributor Kevin Cirilli is doing just that. And Kevin, I know you spoke with a lot of key voices down there. I got to say, I'm very jealous. I wish I was in your shoes right now. Give us a lay of the land. What's it like down there in Arizona right now?
Well, when the plane landed at Sky Harbor, I thought I was in Ireland because all I kept seeing was green. There are literally, I've seen like maybe one or two Chiefs fans, but it's all Eagles fans everywhere. So, I feel like I'm at home here in sunny Scottsdale, Camelback Mountain behind me, if you know the area. Look, I was at the Phoenix Open, the Waste Management Open earlier this week, which has really become a business-private partnership, public-private partnership, really a hub that Jack Selby, who's the managing director for Peter Thiel's family, and he's got his own venture capitalist investing $110 million here in the state. He started this thing, and it's really gone global. And one of the folks he was able to get out there was Governor Katie Hobbs, the newly elected Democratic governor of Arizona. And she noted the economic impact that the Super Bowl, that the Phoenix Open, that's having on this state. Take a listen to what she told me on the 17th hole.
It is huge. It is huge. We have 160,000 workers in our tourism and hospitality industry that are ready to welcome the visitors that are already here, making sure they have a great experience. That gets return visits, and that helps our economy. The last time we had the Super Bowl in 2015, the economic impact was over $700 million.
$700 million.
Yeah,
wow.
With over 100,000 visitors. So we're expecting to top that. And the lasting benefit to our economy, because we've become sort of, we have a great track record with these kind of big events, and it's just going to attract more of them in the future.
So when you look at the numbers, last year alone, $24.2 billion worth in the sports and tourism industry contributed to Arizona's GDP. They're expecting that the Super Bowl alone will increase that number to more than $1 billion. So you could see a 5% increase in that regard. But a lot of economic development here outside of sports, the semiconductor chip manufacturing that's being conducted here in the state, something that President Biden talked about in his State of the Union address earlier this week. Remember, Intel, TSMC building their fab factories down here. The governor's excited about that. Jack Selby's excited about that. A lot happening. They're trying to give Austin a run for their money.
All right, quickly, I know you're a big fan. I know you think Philly's going to win. Give me a score, and what's the particular edge you think that Philly has over KC?
All right, well, you're one, the fans. That's the edge, clearly. Two, they're going to essentially be playing in a home stadium. And three, I'm thinking it'll be 27-24 Birds. I do think it's going to be a nail-biter. I heard you compare the Chiefs to Hogwarts, and I got to say, that is not the case, okay? Like the Eagles are Gryffindor. Let me just put it that way. How's that?
First off, it was Patrick Mahomes is Harry Potter, has a bit of wizardry to him. Let's get it straight, Cirilli. All right?
Okay.
Good luck,
we'll
brother. Enjoy it out there,
I appreciate
okay?
it.
Have
it's
fun.
awesome. I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you for having me.
All right, we're going to be taking a look now at some prop bets. Through the hour, our Josh Schafer. He is our resident junkie gambler, and he's going to break it down for us. I need some prop action, so what do you got?
Right, we got some fun ones here for you guys. We're going to start with Gatorade, which sounds like it's a hot topic for you two. And I'm not going to lie. Where did we pick? Who had red? Someone had red, right?
Well, I took red, yeah.
All right, you're with 8% of the handle here. That's plus 450 odds, Dave. So what you're looking at is where people are betting. So the most bet on Gatorade is yellow. 40% of the money is on yellow. And then you got 20% of the money on blue, 20% of the money on orange.
That's my pick.
My pick, I got to step out of the way here, is purple. Because I think Riptide Rush is the best Gatorade. And that's simply all I'm picking off of. There is some fun stats if you guys want to go deep into this, right? Orange is the most picked. That's probably why Seana picked it. It's come up the most times since 2001. And then yellow is also very popular right now among Eagles fans. So yellow was poured on Doug Peterson at the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl the last time the Eagles won. And Nick Sirianni, 2 weeks ago, had yellow Gatorade poured on him.
I love that
really
flavor.
like yellow.
That's a solid scoop. There's some of these colors, Josh, that are a little bit in between. That there's like a greenish blue. You know what I mean? The greenish blue Gatorade.
Well, we got yellow green.
I don't know. I'm looking at it.
You're going to have to call back up Jason Robbins,
You're
I think,
going to be
on
the one
Monday.
that's disputing the color of Gatorade.
What color you had. Because yellow green is the only unclear one here. You got red pink.
Yeah, that would be pretty clear.
Ink.
That's going to be a tough one to argue with.
That's why I'm going with purple.
Okay.
It's simple. I don't know if it's ever
I'm going
happened,
orange.
but I'm going purple.
Okay. All right. That's a good job.
All right, coming up, Eagles defensive tackle Ndamukong Suh, who competes for his second Super Bowl ring on Sunday, also boasts an impressive investing portfolio. He'll tell us more about it next.
No shortage of storylines ahead of Super Bowl 57. We've got the first ever meeting of black quarterbacks, the first ever meeting between two brothers in Jason and Travis Kelce, and the third Super Bowl with three different teams for one of the greatest defensive linemen in NFL history. I'm talking about Eagles five-time All-Pro defensive tackle Ndamukong Suh, who joins us now. Great of you to find the time during this busy week, my friend. So three teams, three Super Bowls. What makes this experience different for you?
The experience is each and every single year is different, no matter what team you're with, whether you've been with the team for 10 years or 2 years. Every year is different. Every team is different and always going to continue to be that way, unfortunately, but that's part of the business. But it's exciting to have an opportunity to get back to the Super Bowl and have another opportunity to win.
And Ndamukong, it's great to see you. You're playing for my hometown team, so I'm clearly rooting for you on Sunday. You're playing this time for Nick Sirianni, who's not that much older than you from your time with the Eagles this year. What have you learned from him just in terms of the leadership and his success that he's clearly having so early in his career?
He's a great coach. Having played against him last year in the playoffs when I was down in Tampa, and we took care of business that first round. But He's a great coach. He understands all the different nuances, has an opportunity to be a lead on the offense side of the ball, but also understand the defense and how he wants to particularly rush up front and get after quarterbacks. And I think from the standpoint of his leadership, he just understands it's all about keeping detail-oriented process, focusing on the things that count the most when it comes to situational ball, and going from there.
I mentioned that quarterback matchup, which is so intriguing. Tell me about the key to defending, to stopping, to containing Patrick Mahomes. And if I could ask a double, you shut down your quarterback, Jalen Hurts, this time last year, a bit earlier. How much has he grown in that 1 year?
Yeah, we'll start first with Patrick Mahomes. He's a great talent, very, very elusive, to say the least. I haven't gone against him in years past, but most notably in the 2020-21 Super Bowl that I won with Tampa. He's just always extending the play, and that's something as a defensive line that we have to focus on. There's no end in rushing until that ball is either incomplete or you've got a sack and he's fully down. You got to keep rushing because he loves to extend plays and make things happen and getting balls to his receivers, especially 87. And so when it comes to transitioning to Jalen, I think Jalen has grown tremendously. He's found a way to not only hurt people with his feet, but as well as his arm. And I think the GM, Howie, did an amazing job of finding great talent around him and adding some pieces, for example, A.J. Brown.
Boy, has he come a long way in just 1 year. Speaking of, you've come a long way over your career. You were once voted the dirtiest player in the league. You've been fined more than $600,000. But recently, you played peacekeeper against the Niners. How do you think you have evolved over these 13 years, or were you just misunderstood?
I've always said it. If people ever take the time to really get to understand me and get to know me, and really truthfully be unbiased when it comes to my personality and my character, they wouldn't have made those votes and they wouldn't have had that particular characteristics around me as a person. I've always been some sort of a peacekeeper, or if you want to call it that, but I know Trent well. So when he saw me getting in front of him, and it wasn't about anything other than the game is pretty much over. Let's move on. Let's get to the next play and go from there.
You've clearly had a lot of success on the field. You've also had a lot of success off the field as well. I know you have invested in over 30 companies. One of your mentors is actually Warren Buffett. Talk to us just about that relationship, the biggest lessons that you've learned from him, and how that's really helped shape your investment career.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've learned from Mr. Buffett is just being able to have good people around you. And as you see, he has multiple companies. He trusts those folks and puts them in places and empowers them. And that's something that I like to do, not only in my foundation with my family and my wife, but also being able to be able to empower people, whether it's in the real estate realm, having a development company, being able to build multifamily housing, being able to take care of other people, and finding ways to find affordable housing for folks that should be afforded to them at all times. And it's tough in this day and age, especially going through the pandemic. You saw that it's probably its worst. And so hopefully we can continue as a collective to get better in that space. But when it comes to investing, I just have fun with it. I love learning, love being able to sit down with folks. I actually sat down with one of our owners yesterday to have a great conversation of how he built his company in KKR. I've done some work with them. And so it's a fun opportunity for me to just be able to build relationships and learn from folks, and then being able to be involved and be hands-on.
You mentioned your involvement in real estate there a moment ago, some of your initiatives, how you're looking to tackle housing affordability. From your perspective, from your involvement in this space over the last several years, what more do you think needs to be done, and how do we better address this issue?
Yeah, I think I think one of the key things that we could do, especially when it comes to affordable housing, is kind of take it out of the city and state's hands. If we privatize it in a manner to incentivize private real estate people, it'd be great. I mean, because if you really look at it and break down the numbers from a perspective how I look at it, it's one of the most expensive housing just because of the rules and regulations that go into it, which I understand and respect. But if we potentially looked at it being privatized, I think it would be a lot faster. And to be able to be something that is afforded to people a lot quicker.
You're involved in over 30 companies here. I think a lot of people at home are asking, how do you have the time for this? How involved are you with each investment?
Yeah, I think I'm very, very involved each and every single day, finding time to be able to do it. But it's really being able to compartmentalize things. Obviously, playing football pulls me away from it a fair amount, but I've been in it for 13 years, understand how I need to study, how I need to focus, even going into a very important week like this week with the Super Bowl. I can still look at things. I probably won't as detailed and push it off just a week or two, but for me, I still look at opportunities and find time to do it. And I think one of the greatest things that helps you, keeps you sharp, because if you get overloaded in one particular thing, then you don't have the capacity to go and look at other things and find ways to keep your mind sharp when it comes to playing football and knowing what you need to accomplish.
That is a super sharp man and a likely future Hall of Famer in Ndamukong Suh. Well, if you don't have a ticket to the Super Bowl, you're not too late, and the trends are, in fact, going in your favor, so maybe be patient. You will, though, have to shell out a ton of cash to go to this game. We're taking a look at the prices all through this week. The cheapest ticket selling for $4,300. That was Monday, according to StubHub, but that number gradually declining through the week, the opposite trend that we usually see, dropping $200 Tuesday, a huge drop of $500 on Wednesday, and we're finishing out the week with the cheapest ticket costing $3,100. Still a ton of cheddar, but it's come down considerably from the beginning of the week. All that data is for the cheapest ticket to the game. That's in the nosebleeds. If you want the good seats, if you want to bring a friend that you're trying to impress, you got to really shell out. And here's the cost. You can sit in section 138M, row 44, main end zone. Tickets are a cool $87,000 each. So you and a friend will pay over $174,000 to see the game. You better, well, we won't go on. Some other trends we're watching. Eagles fans are outselling Chiefs fans by more than double, according to StubHub. That fits what we're hearing from Kevin Cirilli on the ground in Arizona. The ticket vendor seeing a last-minute sales spike in Mexico, the number 2 top-selling country outside of the U.S., behind Canada. And most U.S. buyers are coming from these 5 states. No surprise, Pennsylvania, California, New Jersey, Arizona, and Florida. Chiefs fans in Missouri and Kansas accounting for a combined 8% of sales. What's going on, Chiefs fans? You got a couple of days to try to change that dynamic. Coming up, Apple will be in the spotlight at Super Bowl 57. Find out what a big Sunday could mean for that company. And we asked you if Rihanna will bring out any surprise guests during the Apple-sponsored Super Bowl halftime show. Roughly 60% of you said yes. We will discuss coming up who that might be. Some of you made predictions. We've got A$AP Rocky, Miley Cyrus, Jay-Z, even Beyonce is possible guest. More on what else to expect coming up next.
A huge part of the Super Bowl is the halftime show, with many people tuning into the game just for that big performance. This year, Apple is the official sponsor, and Rihanna is taking the stage with her first live performance in years. I know I'm very excited for the game. Allie Canal is very excited for the game. She's on the set now. You don't have to look any further than that jersey that she's wearing for who she's rooting for this weekend.
She's chair dancing, man.
Chair dancing.
I'm like in such a giddy mood.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
There we go. We're ready.
Yeah,
We might have talked to Allie on Monday. I don't know.
Lots of hype here. All right, Al, let's talk about the halftime show, right? Because lots of money going into it, lots of hype ahead of this show. What can we expect, and how expensive is it for these musicians?
Well, the NFL, famously doesn't pay the halftime performers, but it does pay for all the upfront costs. So think about the stages, the background dancers, the lighting. That's all the NFL. And that could amount to a pretty hefty price tag, around $17 million. That was a reported cost for last year's show. Riri, she's going to want the production value. It could be even more for that. And for Rihanna, she was asked to do the halftime show back in 2019. She said no in solidarity with Colin Kaepernick. Now she's back. She said she's ready for this moment. She's apparently changed her set list 39 times. Yeah. So I am ready for this. And it's going to be very big for her in terms of her streams on those music platforms like Spotify, like Apple Music. If you take a look at the past, last year's performance, which featured Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Mary J. Blige, Kendrick Lamar, Eminem, and 50 Cent, each and every one of those performers saw a boost to their personal catalogs. Dr. Dre saw a 183% increase in album sales, a 105% bump in on-demand streams. Mary J. Blige, her album sales jumped almost 1,000%, with Snoop Dogg's rising 361%. And then if you take a look at the 5 years prior, we have The Weeknd, J-Lo, Shakira, Maroon 5, Justin Timberlake, Lady Gaga, all an uptick in digital downloads, album sales, Spotify streams. So the exposure here is unbelievable. And that's really why it's worth it for a lot of these artists. And we've seen an uptick in the amount of viewers that are actually tuning in and watching this halftime show. Last year, for example, viewership was up 7% compared to 2021, with more than 130 million people tuning in. So we'll have to see if Rihanna can get those numbers up even higher, which I think she can.
Do you really?
I do. People are excited about this.
I know. I'm excited. Don't get me wrong. A lot of people want to know opening song and special guest. We've seen a lot of that in recent years. What do you got?
Opening song, I got Run This Town. That just feels to me like an opening song. Special guest, I think it has to be Jay-Z. Jay-Z's Rock Nation is a producer of the halftime show. Rihanna's also signed to the Rock Nation label, so I feel like he's gonna help out his girl. He's featured on a lot of her songs. So that's my prediction. That's where I'm going with.
We're gonna go around the horn real quick. I'm gonna go totally outside the box. I think she is unconventional. I don't think she's going to do anybody predictable. It's going to be a country star. It's going to be like Zach Bryan or Zach Brown
Chris
Band.
Stapleton stays after the national anthem?
Ooh, that'd be amazing. My favorite singer of all time. But I think somewhere, Sugarland, someone like that. Unconventional brings in a different portion of audience.
I've got to agree with Allie. I was going to go Jay-Z before we even heard her pick. I think that makes the most sense. We know he has shown a little bit of resistance against the Super Bowl halftime show in the past. I would not be surprised if we see him on that stage on Sunday.
They always make fun of on the sports shows when everyone picks the same team, right? And we all have the same little icon on the bottom, because I'm going to pick Jay-Z too. So that's when they normally say that's not going to happen. But I don't know. That's my favorite song. Run This Town's my favorite song. Jay-Z is obviously very involved, as Allie said. So that was my pick before everyone else picked. So we got to stay with it.
I like Umbrella.
Wow.
Predicting Umbrella. I think that would be the finale. I could see a bunch of umbrellas out there.
Yes, exactly. It could be a good one. We'll see. Clearly, we are very excited for the halftime show. Dave, you got to jump on board here. You know?
I am, man.
We're going to get you to become a Rihanna fan.
Dave is a boomer.
Sooner rather than later.
That's when I get my buffalo chicken dip, man. Whatever.
All right.
I'm here for the game.
Okay, boomer.
All right, Al, thanks so much. Well, Apple, like we've been talking about, replacing Pepsi as the official sponsor for this year's Super Bowl halftime show. $250 million deal spans 5 years. This is according to the Sports Business Journal. Let's discuss what this means for the tech giant. For that, we want to bring back Dan Ives, Wedbush Managing Director and Senior Equity Analyst. Dan, it's great to see you here. So clearly a huge move for Apple, now being the sponsor of the halftime show. How big of a win do you think it is for the company? Dan, I think you're muted. And we love the Eagles jersey, by the way. Got it?
Okay.
There we go.
So part of what Cook and Cupertino are focused on is really on the NFL and live sports. And this is an important part of ultimately what we see Apple doing more and more of over the coming years. I think it's a huge win, and especially in this macro period, Apple doing this further flex the muscles.
Dan, when it talks about Apple here going forward, I think lots of questions just about the amount of money that they have spent or are going to spend on the halftime shows over the next several years. When you see that, does that make sense for them, given the fact that there's no guaranteed return on this type of investment?
But Apple, they're tacticians in terms of how they spend. And this is something they don't just do quickly. And if you look at the history, I mean, they have basically made big bets that have been home run successes. And I think at this juncture, it's very important that they're investing in a time where some others maybe are pulling back. And I think that's an important time, especially going into more iPhone launches as well as some other technologies I'd expect them to introduce over the coming months.
You thought they were going to take a big swing at the Sunday NFL ticket package. What happened there? Did they end up making a bid? Did it just get out of the range they wanted to spend? And do you think they'll take another pass at an NBA, NFL type of property?
Yeah. And look, I think they were significantly involved in that. I think some reports have talked about it. I just think it got to a point where they're only going to spend a certain amount. Ultimately, they were not going to go to that level. But live sports is the key to streaming. I mean, that is one of the keys for Apple when it comes to the streaming piece. I don't think they're stopping here. I think they're going to go after major sports over the coming years. And you look at that content strategy, I mean, it just further highlights whether it's streaming in terms of on the TV or what we see with Apple Music, services under the radar has actually morphed into a pretty massive business.
How much will live sports mean for this tech battle? We just discussed Apple. You've got Google, who made the big play for Sunday NFL ticket, $2.5 billion a year, rumored to be per year. And then Amazon, of course, already in with Thursday Night Football. Or is it not that important in terms of the overall growth investor story?
I think it's a golden jewel. I mean, in terms of what big tech's focused on with streaming, live sports is what is ultimately, and that's why the value continues to go up, because it's not just traditional media. And I think big tech is going to take significant bets on live sports over the coming year, especially as you look into 23, 24, 25, 26, a lot sort of come up for renewal. And I think streaming is going to be a big part of that over the coming years.
Dan, we don't have to ask you who you're rooting for. Very clear. Got to ask you about the score. What do you think it's going to be on Sunday?
I see Eagles by 10. I think ultimately, I think between Hurts and that defense, I see a lot of happy fans in the 215 area code.
I hope you are right. 215 area code is my hometown. Dan Ives, great to see you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, Josh has another bet that he's watching over there. What do you got now, Josh?
All right, guys, we got the coin toss now. You can bet on a 50-50 coin toss. I know, how exciting, right? But people will do it. And we asked our viewers what they picked, and they like heads. We had 55%, or just about 55% of people say that they would vote heads or bet heads. But then when you look actually at where the money is right now at a place like Caesars Sportsbook, the money's on tails. 58% of people betting on tails. You can see the odds right there, minus 102 and minus 102. Of course, even odds, because again, it's a 50-50 bet. Now, if you want to go fun stats, 4 out of the last 5 Super Bowls were heads.
Okay.
That is nice research.
So I don't know if that makes you think your tails is due, or if heads
What would
is
you
hot,
bet,
you
Josh? What
I would go
bet?
heads.
You would go heads?
Yes.
All right.
In a former life, I did the coin toss all the time. I always went heads. You got to play the same one every time. I think that's the strategy on a 50-50.
Real quickly, I want your pick with the spread. It's Philly by 1.5. Who do you got?
Dave, I have a lot of bets set up. Why don't we talk about that in about 10 minutes?
Yeah, all right.
Coming up
Nice
next, the Super Bowl ad landscape is getting a makeover. Find out why sports betting platforms like FanDuel could be a winning bet on Sunday.
It's called the Kick of Destiny.
What the heck is Kick of Destiny?
Good luck. See you in Phoenix. Don't miss.
Oh, boy.
Oh, it's going to be live. 45-yard field goal for Gronk. FanDuel's Kick of Destiny campaign starring Rob Gronkowski, getting plenty of buzz ahead of the big game. Who else is getting banged for their $7 million? John Connors is the co-founder and CEO of marketing and communications agency Boathouse. He joins us now. John, good to see you, man. So last year was labeled the Crypto Bowl. How significant a presence is gambling making? Did they replace crypto?
Yeah, I think to your point, this year is going to be the booze, chips, and gambling bowl all combined. And I love the fact that you led with Gronk.
Well, speaking of being the booze, chips, and gambling bowl, let's talk about the gambling aspect of it with the booze, because Molson Coors is back in the Super Bowl after more than 30 years. They're teaming up with DraftKings. And what's interesting about this initiative is that they're allowing users to bet on who they think, for example, what beer is going to appear first, what dog is going to be used in the commercial. From your perspective, just the engagement aspect of this, how smart is that? And what do you think we'll hear from other alcohol brands this Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, it can't separate gambling from the Super Bowl, right? And so the ability to kind of make that brand connection and to get that engagement, these days everyone's trying to figure out how they can drive up that engagement value, how they can drive up that social value, how they can drive up the conversation. And so I think FanDuel and DraftKings have done masterful jobs sort of between the Gronk bet and the betting on Coors Miller and all the other pieces of driving up as much conversation as possible.
Yeah, the live element of the FanDuel ad, have we ever seen anything like that? And how big do you think that will pay off?
I think we've seen things like that, but not in the Super Bowl, right? So I think at this level, I think you've seen a lot of categories try and launch a lot of new ideas all the way back to Apple 1984. It's always a massive platform for new launches. And I think as those two try to exchange blows to sort of, capture attention, capture volume, I think it's a masterful play.
Well, John, for the big ads, they're pricing out just around $7 million for 30 seconds. We're seeing many companies team up like we've been talking about. One, GM and Netflix in this ad starring Will Ferrell.
General Motors is going electric, and Netflix is joining in by including more EVs in their movies and shows. It's the least they can do.
So if you're going to get swarmed by an army of the dead, why not get swarmed in an EV?
No! I said no biting. Or if you're being voluntarily kidnapped, why not be kidnapped in an EV? What's that scent? Is it pine?
So GM teaming up with Netflix, trying to push their EVs, take them more mainstream. What do you think of this strategy, a big streamer teaming up with an automaker?
I think you're seeing, last year's automakers were an interesting strategy. It was majority electric vehicles when none of them had the electric vehicles yet. So they were all teasing sort of what was coming down the road. I think you're seeing that collaboration piece across the Super Bowl this year. I think, the marketers like to follow the artists, and the artists have been doing collabs for a long time. And I think we're just seeing a significant number, as you know as well. There's a little more safety in the collaboration. Sort of two teams, two big brands like Netflix and GM going at it together just drives in a little bit more safety for their chief marketing officer.
All right, John Connors, thanks so much for joining us. I know a lot of us are very excited for all the ads that we will be seeing in just 2 days from now. Well, coming up, the Super Bowl indicator will tell you how stocks may perform next week based on the big game's outcome. Stay with us.
Welcome back to our Super Bowl special here on Yahoo Finance. Normally we talk plenty about market indicators on this show, like 100-day moving average or how stocks perform in election years, but some say even sports can tell us where Mr. Market is headed over the next year. Ryan Dietrich over at Carson Research recently released the latest data for what's known as the Super Bowl indicator, which tells us how markets perform depending on the outcome of the big game. So let's keep it simple to start. Markets have historically performed better after a team from the NFC conference wins than if the AFC wins. You can see here that's 10% for the NFC, an average return, 6.9% for the AFC. So really, people should be rooting, per this indicator, for the Eagles, who are in the NFC. That would give us a better return per the data. Now, that was a historical chart, of course, going all the way back, including all outcomes. But both these teams have also won Super Bowls in the past. So the Eagles have won one Super Bowl. It was a couple of years ago. And the S&P 500 fell 6.2% that year. The Chiefs have won two Super Bowls. When you average those together, that's up 8.1%. So not a lot to take there, only 3 games. I don't think that's my favorite one. Let's get to my favorite one. Market bulls should really be rooting for a blowout on Sunday. So if you take a look here, the average return of the S&P 500 is 8.5%. Now, when there's a single-digit win in the Super Bowl, it goes up 4.9% on average. When there's a double-digit win in the Super Bowl, it goes up 10.9% on average. But when there's a blowout and someone wins by 21 points or more, there's a blowout in the markets too, and the S&P 500 rises on average 13.6% that year. So I don't know about you guys. I might root for an Eagles blowout on Sunday.
Heck yeah.
Maybe my 401k can recover from last year a little
Philly
bit.
fan here is going to root for that. That will not happen. They could have a comfortable win, but not a blowout win.
We'll keep that thought.
Where is the public money at?
The public money. Let's take a look at the public money, Dave. So we know the spread is 1.5, right? Coming into this game. Yeah. So the Eagles are favored by 1.5. And the public money right now is on the Eagles. So 69% of the handle on DraftKings Sportsbook is currently on the Eagles to cover that 1.5 point spread. So that means they'd have to win by 2. And then what I really want to bet on Sunday, I think, because I love the totals, is 51. So 51 is the total, and that's where people are betting right now. Here's my favorite bet, though. Travis Kelce first touchdown. I bet it earlier in the playoffs. It hit. I love the first touchdown bets. It's really exciting to watch the first couple drives and see it. Plus 700. I'm all over it, Dave. Seana, what are you watching on Sunday? Give us a bet. You got to give us a pick.
All right, well, I went in with a parlay, and I stole this from Ross Tucker, full disclosure, but I got to give credit where credit's due, and I liked it. I liked it a lot, so let's talk about it. I think Jalen Hurts is going to score a touchdown. I think Hassan Reddick is also going to get a sack, and I also think that the Eagles are going to win, and I'm confident in it.
Yeah, Tucker's a pretty good gambler. He's no dummy. I've got a dumb bet because these are dumb bets. When you have multiple things that have to happen. Patrick Mahomes over 1.5 touchdowns. Travis Kelce over 50 yards. A.J. Brown over 50 yards. Devontae Smith, receiver for the Eagles, under 63.5 yards. And Jalen Hurts over 40 yards rushing. Full disclosure, I also stole mine from a 15-year-old who lives in my house. But he's pretty good at this.
It seems like we bet a lot on the ankle injuries there and the lower extreme. Like, how healthy is Jalen Hurts? How healthy is Patrick Mahomes? To talk football a little bit, I'm nervous about some of those prop bets there.
Yeah, you don't like it?
You don't
like it? Well, look, the thing now, I say a dumb bet because those have such tremendous odds that they lure in a lot of people because they pay off well, but no one ever wins them.
They have the highest hold rate for sportsbooks, too. Sportsbooks want you to bet those same-game parlays because they make the most money off of them. But coming up, we're talking about inflation. It's crashing your Super Bowl party. Find out how much you'll need to shell out for food and drinks when we come back.
What good is watching football if you don't have a bevy of snacks and also drinks to enjoy during the big game? But this year, you got to keep a very close eye on that price tag because when it comes to checkout, some fan favorites are much pricier than they've been in years past. Allie Canal joining us now with a closer look at what we will be paying this weekend. Allie, what do you got?
Well, the good news is, Seana, if you want some chicken wings, which we have on our set now, that's actually cheaper, 22% cheaper compared to this time last year, $2.65 versus $3.38 per pound the week of Super Bowl 2022. And that's due to a larger supply of wings, decreased freight costs, all of that driving prices lower. And if you want to get a little bit fancier than wings, we have sirloin steak prices. That's also down by about $1 per pound. I feel like you maybe are a steak guy. Philly cheesesteak, maybe?
Not during the Super Bowl.
Philly cheesesteak,
though. I think that could be an
You can't have a
option.
steak during the Super Bowl.
I know. So you probably want to stick with the wings plus 22% versus the $1 less. I think you go with the wings here. But chips and guac, avocados, they're also down, which is nice. But something that's up is your beer. 11% higher.
Wow.
And they've seen demand slip because of that towards the end of the year.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too that soft drinks as well, they're up 25%. So it's actually cheaper to get a little buzz going than to stay sober during the game. But we were talking about
needed another reason to go out and get a drink during the big game.
In the spirit of that, but talking about spirits though, that's actually only up 2% while wine is up 3%. So maybe a little sangria action if you don't want the beer. That's a cheaper option.
Not bad.
But overall, I think for the Super Bowl, people want to drink their beer.
Wings versus boneless wings, Allie. You are the expert. We have them both here. Shauna and I are team boneless.
We are.
I'm not team boneless.
We're an island by ourselves.
I'm bone-in, but I'm flats over drumsticks all day.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
What about you?
Baby.
No, I'm absolutely bone-in. I am of the take that if you have boneless wings, they're actually
That just looks sad.
Those are chicken nuggets. Those are chicken nuggets.
Oh.
Those are
Josh,
chicken wings.
I will eat them
Shauna,
all to
Allie,
myself.
thank you guys. That'll do it for our big game coverage. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the Super Bowl, and we'll see you on Monday.
Go Birds.